games, but no one is playing them, right? Like the vast majority of players are now playing like shooters and whatnot. And so like it's weird to think of when I was young, when like I could pick up most JRPGs. Anyone who has a PlayStation or played, you know, Final Fantasy or like what's it's like Tales of Dragoon. Tales of Dragoon is
Legend of Dragon.
Legend of Dragon. That's what it is. Yes. Or like Breath of Fire and yeah, like. But then around like PS3, I'd be like, all right, I got this game, and then that's the introduction to my friends is me buying the game. Like it's not like that wasn't the game everyone was talking about, and so I want to like there has to be a reason and an analysis that we go through, and as you go through, there's like it's kind of like one company's fault. They almost entirely blame that on Bethesda. Not that Bethesda makes bad games, but like it kind of sucked up the entire like RPG genre into like its clutches, and it's not a game. Yeah.
I would also argue that that there exists a direct correlation between the popularity of JRPGs and the popularity of anime. And during the late 90s and early 2000s, when JRPGs were at the most popular, was also at the time when anime, especially among young kids, was at its most popular and most mainstream. But after that, it became somewhat more niche again.
Absolutely.
I could see that.
Toonami years.
Yeah, because Toonami, you know, every kid, especially Dragon Ball. You know, when Dragon Quest came up here and everybody heard from the creator and artist of Dragon Ball, it was
But part of it, I also look at like technical limitations, right? So PS3 can do a lot more than a PS1. Like old school JRPGs, I love them. All right, I love like a slow methodical battle where I'm just like, there are times that I put a controller down and be like, what do I do? And like I plan things out and like yes.
Well, the problem was like the PS3 is also notoriously difficult to program for.
Yes.
So everybody bailed on it.
Yes. And then Xbox isn't really known for RPGs. Like they have a couple, but then again, they're mostly
they're Western RPGs.
But funnily enough, one of the most popular RPGs was a JRPG done by a Western company.
Yes.
Yeah.
during like the 360 era, which I found hilarious. It was a great game. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Still hilariously ironic.
Yeah, but like the introduction of the ability to do so many things in action and mobility, and part of it I think is people who originally played games and have played on the PlayStation 1. That was a smaller like the crowd that the PlayStation 1 drew was less mainstream in general, and so the addition of like making gaming more mainstream brings more players who just want something simple and like I can't stand a game that I can play in 15 minutes and then drop it. Personally, I can't play Overwatch, I can't play Call of Duty, I can't play Battlefield. I don't play any of them because I need that progression in my games. I need it, I crave it. Because that's what I grew up on. And so like to not have it, I'm just like there was a weekend where Overwatch played free and I like dropped it in an hour. I'm just like, I can't play this game. And like that's great. That's great for people who like Overwatch, but like there's definitely something missing from like these main field games that doesn't speak to people like me who want that story and that like the emotional attachment that I feel. And I can see like the horizon where like Square Enix has finally got its stuff again. It's like, oh, when they made Bravely Default and they're like, oh, people like this?
but let's sink all that money into Final Fantasy 15 now.
Yeah.
And then watch
Which
that die.
didn't turn out too bad.
In Japan.
Yeah.
In Japan.
Well, in Japan it died.
Yeah.
There's one JRPG that I like the most.
Yes, go ahead.
Kingdom Hearts.
Kingdom Hearts is great, and that's where like you can see that Western influence really marching into.
Yeah, we're West and East together.
Yeah, it really meets on that front.
Yeah, so like I'm sure everybody has realized this. A lot of old school and I guess even new age JRPGs they absolutely love sticking to that like turn-based combat. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, and then
And that's actually at least over here in the West, it's probably what threw off a lot of people over time, because the only Western RPGs that had turn-based combat were in the like early to mid '90s, and once we started getting into the PS2 era, the Western RPGs dropped the turn-based combat for simple full-time combat.
yeah, people like enjoy Baldur's Gate and whatnot, but like as it evolved, I feel like that started to turn into things like Knights of the Old Republic and Dragon Age.
Diablo.
Yeah, Diablo.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, more specifically, like Diablo, Knights of the Old Republic, and like even Jade Empire, they all do one thing, and they do these random rolls, right? And they hide them from you, and they do it in a way that's like you just attack this thing, and then it keeps rolling for you. Whereas in an old school JRPG, it's just I do this, like I formulate my strategy this turn, and then that happens. So it still has these like rules of everyone taking a turn, and like you select your commands, but now it's automating it until you select something else, and it tries to streamline that, and so it doesn't pause it. And you can kind of see that's like this is why I blame Bethesda, because Bethesda's really good at doing it, and then like I love their early games that still hold on to that, and then they start to evolve and get to a point where like I did not like Dragon Age Inquisition. I did not.
I don't think a lot like
It was so empty of a game, I felt like, and I was just like I wanted the story to be there more, and I really loved the world of Dragon Age. But how many times can I visit the location to go visit some weird corner of the map that's going to take me 2 hours? Like, not really often. Yes.
Well, it's a good thing they're making a sequel then.
Supposedly.
Well, I think it's the fact that you have to account for all the different choices the player can possibly make. You end up making a world that's pretty bland.
Yeah, it's
And
just
it's just like, I'd rather like the old JRPG that, yeah, there's this character, he's got a character, not a
that's
series of
another-
choices.
That's another big difference between JRPGs and Western RPGs, especially
Yes.
nowadays.
the like blank slate that is added.
1 second.
Yeah.
Now, do you blame just Bethesda or Bethesda and BioWare?
I also blame BioWare. Don't get me wrong. They're both at fault. And
Yeah.
Bethesda has the larger market share.
BioWare has the earlier one, and they started to modernize it. Bethesda really came in and they're like, yeah, they crafted it in their hand.
Yeah.
I don't know how many
Currently
times they can
on our,
release.
what, like 6th release of Skyrim?
Yeah. And everyone's played so much Skyrim, but Skyrim is definitely not a JRPG, and it is definitely the like ruling lord over all like console RPGs right now. There's no denying that. Otherwise, Bethesda wouldn't be printing money every time they do it.
And the one thing I wanted to say earlier was that one of the biggest differences between Western RPGs and JRPGs is the fact that even in it's less so earlier on in Western RPGs, but right around like the 360 era up until the PS4 era now, Western RPGs have this huge thing of a blank slate, and that is a character that you create by yourself, and it is your representation of you in the game.
Your role playing.
Yeah,
you're role-
Yeah, you're you.
role.
You can be you.
Yeah, you can be anybody. JRPGs, for the most part, there are a few exceptions. Look at you, Dark Souls. But again, influences of each other. JRPGs almost will always have a set character with a set personality, and rather than it being you, it's for somebody that you can either relate to, or somebody that another character you're going to be able to look through another character's eyes to relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, let's get him first because he had his hand raised.
I would say I think that's why Persona 5 did so well in the West, because we haven't had a legit JRPG that was turn-based, had all this other aspects, but wasn't like a blank slate. I'm creating myself for the 45th time in Skyrim, and
Yeah.
all of it is the same. So I think that's one of the big reasons that it did so well to go for something like that.
Yeah, the whole sort of bugbear I have with, like, you know, very heavily story-driven RPGs is it sort of takes away some of the personal investment, I would think, in, you know, your influence in the game. Like, you know, it's you go here, you do this, but like, why should I go here and why should I do this? I think a good medium is when they have, you know, they have a sort of defined character, but he or she has a lot of elasticity to the character, and there's some choices that the player can make, and you can see how the character evolves and reacts to the choices. Or
Like you start.
Absolutely. It's
and-
good.
Yeah.
Just wanted to finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because it really humanizes the character a lot more because you see more angles of them. And I think a game that did this well, and it was actually the more recent one Square Enix published, if I remember correctly, the Deus Ex series.
Yeah, that's a really good example. And while Square Enix did it, and it's definitely a JRPG in the fact that it came from there, the feel to it is like it feels that Western, and you can feel that Western pull.
Well, yeah, it's designed, it's definitely a Western RPG.
Yeah, exactly.
It's designed.
And that's partially, like, part of it is why I blame, like, the Western RPG to me is a completely different game. That blank slate is not, like, an RPG is an RPG.
I have a very bad example of that, of White Knight Chronicles, where you make a character and he's just there.
Yeah. he just exists.
Yeah.
Exists and is not really relevant to the plot whatsoever.
Go ahead.
This reminds me of a RPG game which is made by Ubisoft. Remember South Park? yeah. Ubisoft made a South Park game, The Stick of Truth.
Yep.
And you can create your own character and it's fine. But there's a difference. If you try to put your name in, no matter what, you will always be known as douchebag. That is the one thing that I hate about it.
Yeah.
But if you actually type
Well, that
in
was just-
douchebag, you get an achievement for it. If you actually put in douchebag, you get an achievement.
How'd you get achievement?
To me, it's partially because that game, you have to understand a little bit of, like, they voiced that game. That game is voiced back and to front. And so, are they going to make as many names as they need?
Yeah.
Most of the time, they're going to take that shortcut. And in this case, I think it's
has
a...
happened.
But Fallout 4, that robot, I want to try to put my name Aurora, and it says Mr. Aurora, and then
Yeah,
It's
there are some companies and some games that have
much
it.
money.
Yeah, you have to-
I mean, is anyone in the children here? I'm gonna say it. When I saw two best friends play, they were trying to put fuckface there on the name of it. And then the robot says, Mr. Fuckface. What the heck was that?
You can actually have it also have him say ass face as well.
Oh my god.
Is that personal experience?
Yeah,
So-
that's definitely you know, a point of, like, a company tried their hardest and spent a ton of money.
It takes time to do that, and not every company is going to have that. Like, when it comes to just having the ability to say a name, it takes development time and it takes money. And for example, I have a feeling if it's South Park Stick of Truth, right? If I go by the average budget of South Park, right, and compared it to if that's the average budget, yeah.
That reminded me about, remember when RPG Maker first came out over here?
I
And how we're seeing the seeds of it still even now on Steam regularly.
yeah.
RPG Maker game genre. Let you make your own JRPG with questions. Stop hitting that block.
I don't.
I think it's all the texts that I've been getting slowly throughout this time have just all gone onto yours.
I guess so. I just turned my ringer off. Yeah.
Look, I love my Vita for playing JRPGs,
It's where I think the genre has really taken hold.
but at the same time, I'm starting to feel that it's holding the genre back. Mostly because of the most recent example with Valkyria Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
It was meant to be specifically a PS4 game, but late in development they decided, wait, we gotta try to put a Vita version to it.
Yeah.
And it held back a few of how the cutscenes flow, how the animations of the game flow, and stuff of that nature.
And part of
That's
it
a Japan
is
thing.
that the Vita is not a very popular console compared.
I have a Vita, and it's very good to me.
Well, no,
It is,
well,
it is.
I'm,
He
most,
has a Vita.
like
To the
I
masses,
said,
though.
the Vita has the home is currently to me the home of JRPGs, right? It's where a lot of them come out, and the market who buys the Vita generally is also the market buying JRPGs. So I'm not going to say people in this room who have Vitas are not. It's just if I compare it to home consoles like PS4, the Xbox One, the Vita sale, 3DS,
Yeah.
the Vita sales are low, and I will thank Nintendo for keeping their licenses alive. Being able to play Fire Emblem still is very, very rewarding.
Yes!
Well, speaking of Vita and JRPGs, I've been seeing, because most of the games are exclusive to Japan, and so we can't get them. When I went to the store out here at Metrocon, they got region-free games here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yes,
all.
I love that state.
But-
I go every year.
But
Oh,
please
same
note,
as it-
a lot of the time to get the game over here, it's more money, and a lot of companies don't see. We have died in interest in the JRPG as a country as a whole. Japan needs to take that to make that global move, because at this point the market is global.
Well,
Right.
I would at least put some English subs in it.
Exactly. It wouldn't be hard. We have Crunchyroll, right? That can do it in an hour for most things.
Well, you can put.
Again, though,
My point is, it needs to be a move from the global, from their market.
Yeah, and you
It's
have to
like,
be able to buy the
Japan,
license.
Japan as a
for it,
company
and
is
it's a
very
whole bunch of
xenophobic
legal-
when it comes to like exporting like media. There we go, the word.
Yeah.
Hold on, actually, before it goes,
Yeah, go ahead.
there's a man back here.
There, I was going to say that porting a game over here from Japan also runs like the risk of running the licensing issues. Like certain voice actors can have their voices like portrayed in games in America due to company
Yeah.
not wanting to put up money for the license and stuff.
Yeah.
Getting in trouble.
Yeah, we'll get more into like exporting and importing here in a moment.
Well, you remember the big crap storm that kicked up over Persona 5 being streamed.
I do too.
Oh, yeah.
You're not allowed to stream past a certain date in game.
It's
You weren't allowed to stream period until
Yeah.
you managed to get that.
There's only a
overworked.
certain, you can stream up to a certain kingdom. Once you get to that kingdom, you're not allowed to stream anymore.
Because for some reason they're worried about,
Spoilers.
they don't understand that people watching streams generally are watching.
Well, streams aren't a big thing in Japan. Streaming
Yeah,
is
exactly.
not a big thing at all.
It's a very Americanized thing.
Westernized.
Western, yeah.
Because Europe is
Europe's
a
also-
huge thing on streaming.
But it's not a Western idea, and the integrity of their game, and no matter how shady that tactic is, right? They're just trying to. I can still respect them because they're still trying to hold the integrity of that game, but it's still a really terrible move, and it's just something that the company. It shows the company's devoid of its global market understanding, and so that's why we're not getting all those globalized games, because those companies still aren't understanding what they're losing out in their market.
Let's go with him, and then we'll get to you in the yellow. Continue.
Something I learned just yesterday, actually, with Trails of Cold Steel. Apparently, one of the reasons why that game doesn't have dual audio is because the voice acting company they use in Japan does not allow them to bring those voices over to the West. So they have to revoice the entire game in English, and that's why the original Vita version didn't have all the voice lines that the Japanese version goes. And now that I learned that that's a thing, I'm assuming that also affects importing games, even if they're just sub.
Yeah, they should have a DLC for if they want to do Japanese voices, they can have a DLC like they did for
No,
World
well,
Final
Well,
Fantasy.
that's not really the game. You have to understand that the way games are developed, right? It's almost funny to look at because it has the parent company, right? And the parent company hires so many people, but then they contract. They contract this team, they contract this team, they contract this team. Voice acting normally is contracted work, so it's not like they have an in-house voice acting studio. That studio could make a decision to drop that DLC. That doesn't mean it has the permission from the contracting company, right? It's just like Metrocon can't decide what to do with this convention hall during its time. It has a set of rules set, because they're different companies. So a lot of the times that will happen because of xenophobic tendencies, or to be honest, I'm not even sure why. It's pretty bizarre to me, but
It was news to me.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the yellow.
yeah, we'll go here.
So I just think that the Japanese corporations are behind on times.
Absolutely.
And
As
that's-
we
and that's
can see with
really where they're
Nintendo's notorious for that.
Yes. Like if you see like on YouTube, like you have to, I think there's like a program for Nintendo.
Are you talking about the Nintendo Partners Program?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
and if you're not in that, then they take your videos and they monetize them for them. You know, it's like shady business.
Yeah.
Luckily, they're really slow on getting your videos taken down.
Yeah.
There's actually
That was basically what I was gonna say, except I was gonna point towards like even fan art and stuff.
there's a
Oh yeah.
there's a weird workaround for it.
Yeah.
You have to not want any monetization. So there's a content creator I watch who does all his monetization through Patreon. So he comes up with this deadlock system where throughout his video,
Jim Sterling?
yes, Jim Sterling, he'll just throw in all these copyright claims so that like there's so many conflicting copyrights that no one can monetize the video.
The worst part, at one point in time, a non-monetized video early on, a company took it and monetized it.
Yeah. Well, that was a lot.
Yeah. All right, and you.
Well, I was going to touch on the localization
Yes.
stuff. It's actually has a lot to do with import
Uh-huh.
fees and stuff like that. If we have Japanese audio here in the States, Japanese consumers can get the game cheaper by importing it from us.
Yeah.
That's true.
And companies don't want that, specifically Atlas. That's why they did the DLC for Persona 5.
Okay.
It doesn't natively come with Japanese audio, but you can download it, but only in the States.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I
Yeah.
can see that point. It's still to me that's still a parent game company.
Yeah.
I still don't understand what that can do, but I can start to see some links because I guarantee you, just like any other group of companies, they have some network share.
Well, right now,
Yeah.
one second. Right now, this is actually a big problem for multiple industries, not just Japan, but and not just for us either. But especially with Steam and stuff like that. Just to touch on this for a second, a lot of games, because of the huge worldwide market gaming is now, there's a lot of people and a lot of companies that will buy from a third